Welcome to the StimPack podcast. StimPack is a Haiti-focused think tank and interventional NGO. Thank you for listening.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back to the StimPack podcast, 43 Days to Freedom series. We have a special bonus episode happening right now. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you one of my heroes, Austin Holmes. Austin, welcome to the program.
Great to be here, Jeff. Great to see you.
You.
Honored to be here and get to partake, man.
Thanks. Well, let me do a quick and insufficient introduction to Austin, and then we'll kind of dig in. So those of you who've been listening to the podcast may have heard that name. I know there's a lot of names that get thrown around on the podcast, so I'll just be clear about who Austin is. So in the early days of my kidnapping, my wife was doing what she could through our network, trying to figure out who was qualified in this kind of thing to lead a kidnapping negotiation and extraction somehow, and figure out if that skill set even existed. And the higher you went in the network, the more consistent the refrain was, you got to talk to this guy, Austin Holmes. He's looking for the integrity that you're looking for. And believe it or not, he does it for free. And that's obviously a remarkable set of converging attributes to find in one person. And so we were thrilled to have been introduced to Austin. It took a couple of days for everyone to believe the hype on Austin, but we found it to be nothing but true. And so I was the benefactor of his continued dedication for 6 weeks. And when I say dedication, I mean that's a 24-hour a day availability. Many of the hours of those days are working on getting me set free. That's putting his other many priorities, other worthy endeavors aside, his family being without him for many days, many hours, late nights, during dinner, during vacations, family reunions, all that stuff. It was an immense sacrifice. Austin, I've said thanks many times. I'll continue to do so. Austin is one of my freedom fighters on my lifelong freedom fighters team, and I'm grateful to have you and all that you've done for me. Thanks for being here today.
So honored to get to be Jeff. Man, you kind of talk about getting to know somebody where you feel like you know them really well, but you haven't spent the time together. I think you and I, and I'm just thankful that we got to be a part of the story and getting to watch Mary and Aaron grow through all that was pretty remarkable. There's a little bit of a lag, so forgive me if I miss anything, but yeah, keep going, man. You're great.
No, thank you. Austin has been working in Haiti for years, not just on weird things like getting me out of trouble, but also assisting many large NGOs in trying to lift Haiti in lots of different ways. Austin, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I was introduced to Haiti through some buddies who worked out, who had moved down there in 2009. And, we probably have a pretty typical story of doing about everything wrong you can do wrong. And so we paid some dumb tax, and then we did a lot of work after the earthquake in January 2010. That's when I got introduced to Mission of Hope, and I became very close with the team there. Thought, man, this is what we'd want to be in 20 years. And so just started volunteering and serving there, and that characterizes most of the last 15 years at Haiti. And I think there are some groups that really are seeking to get it right, and they're one of them. Of just, working with, by and through Haitians who love their country, the underappreciated, asset and people are, the Haitians who are sacrificing their lives, their livelihood, their families at great personal cost to continue serving today. Many of whom were a part of, I'm not talking about Mission of Hope here, but just other great people who were part of your recovery and supporting it, who and their names are never going to be mentioned, but we wouldn't have you here today without them. And so, with Mission of Hope, I served there and led all their operations in country for a number of years before we moved back to Florida. I can't say enough good things about them and other groups like them. And I felt privileged to get to serve in Haiti. We just love it. It's part of us.
and I'm grateful that you did. Let's dig into it. Do you mind maybe telling me? I don't know this part of the story. Your first kind of interaction with my crew, and maybe then with Mary also, and kind of how you came in and on the team. Your first kind of interaction with my situation, and you're welcome to name check who you want and avoid who you'd like to avoid naming. It's on you.
Yeah. So the short of it was we were on a family trip out in California, and I get a call from some mutual friends in the special operations community who somewhere between loving, respecting, and hating me enough. We have an inside joke about thank you so much for that introduction. But remember that vividly, and getting tied in with Mary and Aaron and Doug, and kind of that became the team pretty quickly. So yeah, that's how I got tied in. I'll never forget it.
Awesome. So as a reminder, audience, the Doug is my neighbor and friend, and Aaron is my brother-in-law. So Mary's big brother, and the team that is kind of the core team.
Definitely. We would pull Billy in periodically if there was something I thought they needed to hear directly from him. But and Doug too. Mary and Aaron and I were talking daily, and you're just trying to figure it out, right? And
you might tell me a little bit about maybe your first week or so. Like what was maybe your overriding memories there? My guess is you were still just getting started, probably doing a lot of fact finding, probably trying to see if the team was even going to work.
Definitely. When I came in, it was really closer to, I think, day 5 to day 7. And somewhere in there. So it wasn't from the beginning. And so honestly, I was trying to get caught up on who said what commitments were made, who were the actors, who could we trust, who could you not. You're really trying to assess, who's who, right? And who can, everything you're taking with, observations always have a degree of error, and, trust is a highly prized item. And so you're trying to figure out what motivates, which people too. So it took some time to get our legs underneath us. And then I quickly started realizing that we had a problem. His name was Jeff Frazier. I'm going, dang it, I got to deal with this guy. So I'm sitting most of my time going, man, I understand exactly what he's doing. I think I'd be doing the same thing, and yet I have to figure out how to totally discredit this guy. And so, I put myself, or our team, it's almost like we had to assume this adversarial position to you, which we thought was in your interest. So it's like we're fighting Jeff for Jeff was kind of, I think, our language at some point.
Good.
And it's like this game, right? You're firewalled from each other. There's things listening to the podcast where you don't know who's on the other end of that call. Sometimes you make wrong assumptions, or you look back and you go, man, I can't tell you how many times I've looked back on this. I was looking over the AR that we did immediately after, because it's kind of helpful to look at it again from, in light of the podcast and your thoughts.
Yeah.
And there's certainly many things that, we did wrong, could have done better, would have done different. Know what we know now, and you chalk them up and you go, right? You make the best decision you can with the information you have. But you're working to get, to answer your question, a good bearing on the situation, on all the variables around it, so that you ultimately, when you move, that you can move trusting the players that are on the table. Because like, and I think you've said, any negotiations, the irony is it's really about establishing trust. You're working to build and establish credibility to go, hey, can we believe that what they say is true? Do we know that when they say Jeff's okay, that he's actually okay? Do they know that, if we move forward on these terms, are they going to honor it? And so that's tenuous at all times, right? But that was us trying to get our bearing the first weeks, really. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Take me forward into maybe let's talk, unless there's anything else. If I go too fast, you let me know and say, hey, you missed something. Take me forward to where the first time you guys try to make that payment, that first 10K payment, um, tell me a little bit about what that was on your side of that, right? I had a limited view into what that even was. To me, it was a down payment, right? Because I was still negotiating for the big 100K, who I call Gunny was just on the phone saying, "Dude, all I got is 10K," right? And I'm like, "Fine, uh, just bring that. That'll take some heat off of me, and we'll prove the payment mechanism that the money doesn't get lost." Like that's my perspective. And then you, I'm sure, have a totally different view of what went down there. You guys were having conversations that I wasn't having. But tell me about your side of that.
Yeah. Well, I think when I came in, part of that was underway, as far as maybe terms or whatever. We immediately began working to kind of validate the credentials of everyone. I'm going, hey, can I trust them? Who is Jeff working with, right? And so many of those guys turned out to be great actors too. We were always trying to position that, and we weren't going to do multiple payments. And we understood that was the game. We didn't want to partake in a bad faith game. Bad faith being, we're going to do one payment. If it's going to be two payments, then you're going to tell us that it's going to be two payments. But at the end of the day, if we can't trust and define terms and agreements, then what confidence should we ever have in moving forward? And so it was tough at first, and you mentioned earlier, kind of this volunteer, right? Which it's like the last surgeon you want is the free one, So
Not in this case.
So I'm this, free medical doctor, right? Giving advice, which also gives, some level of freedom. I remember many times reminding Aaron and Doug and Mary, who, we've got to talk about Mary at some point.
Yeah.
And Mary became kind of like a sister, like, you guys came so close to it. But, I would remind them, you can fire me at any point. I'm going to tell you if I think you're doing something wrong. And anytime you want to do something different, you can do it. I'm in an advisory role here. If I've got the ball, I'm going to tell you, let you make the decision, and we're going to execute it. But I'm there to advise and execute. It's not ultimately my decision to make, which is, a tough one. And that wasn't to, remove onus or responsibility. It was to respect the fact that Mary has to ultimately have that call, right? And Aaron was there to advise too. And so anyway, so I hated every bit of that. I hated the almost tacit positioning that this was a first payment, disagreed with it, disagreed on the amount, disagreed on the manner in which it was kind of in play. So, kind of reluctantly move forward with very imperfect validation of actors going into that. And yeah, honestly, I think it's something that really set us back. It was, if anybody ever in that situation, you change the offense up after the first quarter, and it's a ton of reset, because what we're really having to do is we're having to undo all the commitments and the entire contextualization for negotiation. And they don't know you had no idea the entire team had changed, right? Like it was way later. Listen to you. I couldn't believe how late it was that you actually first spoke with Billy.
Yeah.
We also had a lot of communication challenges for various reasons. Gang leaders swapping phones and doing all that stuff, leadership changes on their side. But man, that was a tremendous obstacle. I think we lost, to be honest, 2 to 3 weeks that, really reset the starting block, on a 42-day thing that, I think we certainly could have potentially saved us time. But there's also, there's a real element that our view that we had from our side that there's a standard timeline that these tend to operate within a parameter. And so, right when I came in, I wanted to set realistic expectations for everyone, both in terms of what the market was at, what we thought was reasonable and responsible, and what the timing would look like. and what your likelihood or probability of death would be, which is weird to think about, but is very real. In certain gangs, it's higher than others. So there was an element on the time frame standpoint, a time frame view, where you were going to have to, you were in the oven, you were going to have to bake. Like there was no situation where you were going to get out in 14 days, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so that I think was difficult for everyone, but I think ended up being extremely important on our end for everyone to go, hey, it feels really long. And us going, well, this is actually about right. It's about what we thought. But anyway, is that helpful?
Yeah, of course. So, that I was told that first 10K payment, you guys brought it in and they declined it. Do I understand that correctly?
All right. They sent it back, which just kind of miffed everybody. Sometimes you get a knuckleball, and we just said, all right, what do we not know? And we ultimately interpreted it as a signal that they really took a $100,000 commitment seriously. And so from that point on, I knew I had to discredit you.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I don't care about the gang. I care about Jeff. Like we have to sideline Jeff. So everything, became about regaining control, and getting the microphone back, which was, really hard. And you were a worthwhile adversary, Jeff. Formidable. You're a force. And so, but
it's okay to say that I'm obnoxious. That's totally fine.
It wasn't obnoxious. It was, what else should you be doing in the absence of information? And we really failed to communicate and get messaging to you. And we thought we were making attempts, but sometimes things are misinterpreted or not communicated, or text messages don't go through, right? Or they're not, like calls don't go through. So there's a lot that contributes to that. But at the end of the day, we really failed to get that messaging to you so that you would have confidence and trust in that. And that's certainly something I do different.
How could you ever know that? I mean, you guys presumed that I was being coerced, or under duress, or
right.
You guys were trying to speak in code the whole time, and it's an impossible situation.
Right.
I don't know how you would have gone about it differently. You would have had to somehow know that I was telling the truth when I said you can speak freely, and I don't know how you would have known that. And I've listened to the recordings, after the fact, and if I put myself in your shoes, I don't know that I would have believed me either. Right? What does duress sound like? Right? What does coerced conversation sound like?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you could see those things both ways, right?
Right.
Everybody's in an impossible situation. Okay, let's fast forward to day 27, 28. So negotiations start to ramp up and get real. Tell me about why you guys felt confident kind of moving forward and making an accord, and tell me maybe your side, as you saw it.
Man, that one was frustrating. And you reference it. I think it's a good starting place where, if the gangs, when their strategy is to work this multi-payment system, then, they understand at a point, that the more they do that, the less trust people have in their agreements or accords. And then we saw there became this kind of like subtle pivot that gangs, many were making, which was, hey, we're going to blame it on a courier or an alternative gang who stole it en route. Likelihood of that happening while gangs are running the city, and while there are checkpoints and everything else, we feel like the likelihood of that is extremely low. We do often view couriers as they're the people in the middle, they're in the gray, so we have questionable trust there at any point, at all points. But short of it being like that became a ruse to basically omit a payment, and to discredit it, at which point we rejected. And we had made them aware of that prior to that negotiation and accord, and how we would view it. And so we wanted to signpost and anchor, at every point. And we also wanted to make it clear to them which I think this is, really difficult for Aaron and Mary and multiple points, but we had to make it really clear that we were very fine with you sitting there and them continuing to feed you, because your life was worth nothing if you weren't alive. And we were prepared to walk in the absence of trust and working forward with them. So that was a major setback, and we wanted to communicate it as such to them. Man, they violated trust. They're going to have to earn it back with us. And we're not interested in resetting the negotiation. Payment is payment. If they got stolen en route, then it's their freaking job to go find it. And so it sounds like they're too weak a leader to have too little control, and they need to maybe go get a big boy gang member to figure out how to control transportation en route. And so we got pretty aggressive, man. But it's just, we know the game, right, in the play, and we wanted to be clear that we didn't have the intention of playing it with them. So yeah, that effectively for you, that adds time. That just sucked, but we felt like it was really important for them knowing who we were and how we were going to operate with them. That one sucked.
Do you remember when Bois-Colais kind of got going, and your perspective of that from the outside looking in? Right, I know a lot about Bois-Colais now after I got out, but I only knew my version of it, right, that I was seeing with my own eyes. I can only imagine what you guys were speculating from the word you were getting.
Yeah, man, that was the short of it was that it was a variable that we couldn't control that contributed negatively to your timeline, right? Yeah. It was a very real threat and distraction for the gangs, and a real risk for them. We love that there was a movement against the gangs to hopefully prevent them from operating so freely and with such impunity. It's really a larger indication and indictment on the governance structure and law enforcement capabilities of Haiti and of the international community. But it had a huge impact on us, and it kind of was a stalling function for both sides. So I think it's like watching like on the Nature Channel, like you see two bulls steering off, and then another predator comes in, and it's like, well, how's this going to play out? And everybody just kind of like stops. Kind of how it felt. And of course we were, coordinating closely with law enforcement and country, and aware of who they were, because they got aggressive on them, and we're taking measures to try to get offensive as well with some of the gangs during that time. And so we were like, man, we're tracking that, praying to see like, man, maybe we catch a break here. In a few ways. And I think everybody kind of had to let the dust settle on that before we could pick up some things. But yeah, it was a real variable, a real threat. And, we wanted to be opportunistic. Obviously, it didn't directly impact us much further than that.
Awesome. Let's go backwards a little bit. Can you talk to me about your first impressions of Mary and, the ramping her up, getting her ready, how she was responding, how you were working together, that kind of thing.
Oh man. Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure I spoke with Doug or Aaron first, before getting connected to Mary, which is great, right? That they were shielding and vetting people prior to bringing them into her, which, man, I think they served Mary so well and so faithfully through it. First connection to Mary, I don't remember exactly, and I don't have my notes in front of me from the conversation, but I knew you had somebody who was a person of faith. I knew you had this, she came across, and obviously comes across so genuine, right? She's so authentic in every way. And so you're not sitting there, when you're talking with Mary, you're not really wondering if there's something else that she's thinking, if there's another narrative that's playing. She was such a good faith, which of course she's operating in good faith for you. I feel like she was very discerning, but also I think we were able to establish trust quickly, where she wanted, she's a great question asker too. So I think she wanted our opinion as well as our observations and recommendations. And I think she did a really good job oftentimes of kind of poking behind that recommendation to go, hey, what are the concerns or the variables that shape this, where she wanted to know the why, and she obviously was doing everything in her interest for you, and she was doing it in a manner that was, I think, so responsible for the sake of, like, she was able. I've told her, like, you sure she needs to write a book about this whole thing too, because her ability to go from, and my husband's kidnapped, what does this mean, to really being, she was able to live in it, but be on top of it, to also go, what's the larger context and effects and impact of all of this? Not just on the family, but on Haiti, on the other missionaries who are there, on the kidnapping environment at large, on gangs, larger security risk, on even the national context of U.S. Haiti relations and all that stuff. So she's such a quick study. I think was shrewd in assessing who she could trust and who she couldn't. Multiple times, I just found her to be so discerning with people. I'm like, she's sharing a conversation or something with me, and I'd ask one question. She'd be like, Austin, you don't trust these people, do you? Like, here's what I'm actually thinking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think you're right on. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I think that person's a bad actor. You really want to know what I think? I wouldn't work with them. And she was remarkably steady, I think is the last thing I'd say, through it, which wasn't this faux strength, right? It wasn't put on. I think that was her, her and Aaron and I, we prayed together multiple times. Like, my background's a ministry guy, right? As a missionary in country. Yeah. And so I think we had what I'd call value alignment, and a unified faith that we were going to trust God through a really difficult situation, and we're going to make flawed decisions with inadequate information, and move forward, trusting that God will be good. And so, anyway, faithful, resilient, crazy discerning, and yeah, her and Aaron were awesome to work with, and she's a pretty remarkable person. Yeah.
Awesome. Amen. Amen to all those things. I remember her sharing with me that there was a progression for her from where in the beginning she was kind of deferring to you and your team, meaning, what do you think? What do you think? What should we do? Right? Tell me what to do. Because of course she's coming in with 100% ignorance, right, and naivete to kidnapping resolution efforts.
Right.
And she just wants the experts to be in charge, right? And she'll, sign on the dotted line, and you guys handle it, right? She told me about when she realized how unfair that was, for you guys to be making mortal decisions on my behalf, and for her to be outsourcing that level of responsibility, and began to take it on herself and start asking those discerning questions so that she could step up to that plate and make those decisions on her own behalf, and therefore absolving you of the responsibility to do so. And I just was dumbfounded when she told me about that progression. It's like, wow.
What a transformation, right? I mean, that's a pill right there, right?
Yeah.
And that's the strength and backbone to see that, acknowledge it, and to step up to the plate to be responsible for it, right? Meanwhile, she's, I'm sure, running kids around to school. There are multiple times we get a call, and she texts me back, I got kids in the car, or we're running to practice, right? Because she's trying to keep all the plates running.
Yeah.
As you know, like that, you get comfortable with there's this level of duplicity almost that, it can feel manipulative. It's not manipulative for the protection of everyone and the mission. That's a hard place to live, and it was a long place for everyone to live, right? Her more than anyone on your case. Yeah. Man, really remarkable. And absolutely correct on that kind of transformation for sure.
Yeah. Okay. You make the ransom payment, the first ransom payment that's actually received. That's day 28. Then that night, I talk on the phone with Billy. He's like, hey, we paid, they agreed to give you up, and they didn't. And they're demanding the 100K again. And tell me about the night of day 28. So that's following the failed ransom attempt. So you guys deliver the money, the gang gets the money. and they won't give me up. And I remember I get on the phone with Billy, and Billy explains that to me. Again, I'd already received it from Bad Cop. He'd already yelled it in my face, but we talked about it again, and I said, "Yeah, no, I get it." I didn't tell him I was about to escape, but I had already decided. Yeah, don't worry, I'm going out the window. I'll see you in a little bit. I hope. But yeah, you guys don't know any of that. So tell me what's happening on your end. I'm sure you're not particularly surprised, but what else is going through your guys' mind?
Yeah, that's right. And they're running their play on payment and treating it like the first of many. And so we are resetting once again. And so, we felt like we kept running. It had to have felt so frustrating for Aaron and Mary. I'm going, Mary, we've got to reset again. Like we're running the same talking points and the same communication play again, because we've got to reestablish trust and rules and what the playing field looks like. And so, I forgot how many turnovers we actually had with respect to who the decision maker was. Because that's the other side, is sometimes you get a different negotiator, but you got the same decision maker. And so there's varying levels of autonomy that a given negotiator has. That's true on both sides, right? But it was interesting on us discerning. We're trying to get beneath that and behind it, going, who actually is making the decision? Did they just do a change out on the front office guys and it's the same dude calling the shots? And so we feel like we're back at square one. And again, just trying to reset with them on it.
So that's going to take, the time that it's going to take. I remember I don't hear from you guys till I think day 38.
Yep.
So it's a ways, right? And I remember Billy telling me, "Hey, we've been trying to talk to you. We've been trying to call it," because I was mad. So I'm in solitary at that point, right? Because everybody else is gone, right? And I'm in solitary, and I forget what day. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 38. I'm talking to Billy. I'm like, dude, like, you got to call me, right? You got to talk to me. Like, you don't have to negotiate with those guys, but I got to talk to somebody. Be my friend. Will you be my friend, Billy? Anyway, do you remember on what's happening? Like, was it really 8 days between your efforts to reach out to those guys? Or tell me what was happening on your side.
Oh, no. So when an accord is broken, there's like this process of, how do you repair, right? Because it's actually it's in both parties' interest to repair it and to be talking. I mean, we wanted to, one, your side may change, the situation hasn't changed. The narrative is still the same. Payments that have been made or attempts to do them or agreements that have been made need to be honored, or they need to be overtly addressed and reframed. And so we're, it's kind of like somebody bringing in a new negotiator, just thinking, hey, we get a mass reset. And our goal is to go, no, you don't. We're going to take that reset button off the table. No, you don't. Here's the terms. Here's expectations, and sometimes those are agreed to, and sometimes they're one side saying, we will not move on it, and we won't communicate further with you unless you honor and respect it. Yeah. And so, that was important. I think it's the reason that, ultimately we were able to do a live exchange for you. I think that speaks to a level of trust and credibility that we were able to, build mutually, if that's possible to say, with, with the final actors on their side. But we wanted to communicate a lot of frustration, a lot of broken trust, a lot of loss of credibility. We were also, we're also always working multiple plays, right? I mean, there's options, other ways to get you out, and we were gonna, we're gonna work every play, and always do the one that seems in your best interest. And so anyway, we were pursuing that, but we were always reaching out. Sometimes if they didn't agree to acknowledging certain facts, then we'd say, oh, well, we'll talk tomorrow. And we'd get off, and let them know, until you address the following, things. We'd say, keep feeding Jeff, better be alive. If he's not
Yeah.
alive, you don't get anything. And so anyway, we were willing to be aggressive in that. And, and Mary she was committed to us being consistent and anchoring on that, despite there's a short-term cost to that, right? The short-term cost is, what if they're going to do it this time, right? What if we can trust them? What if this is a new guy, right? And no, we've got to take the long-term. We're going to maintain a long-term mindset of, here's what we agreed to. We have to establish trust and terms. And until we do so, and until we see, validation of that along the path to that exchange or outcome, then we walk. And so it's a step deal. Yeah, we were trying to reset that for 8 days, and
Okay, so 8:38, I talked to Billy for the first time, and I tell him, hey, dude, I think they're ready to deal, right? Everybody else is gone, which is probably not news to you at that point, but because I think you had been debriefing people as they were being released. But and by myself, I'm trying to sell the idea like, hey, dude, it really feels like they're ready to get rid of me because they've been getting rid of one. Billy's not having it. He's like, dude, we're gonna work non-monetary solutions right now, and you just sit tight and don't worry. And I ask him for details, and he stonewalls me. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna tell you anything, goober. And somehow the gang blinks, right? Because I give the phone back to, I think, Shut and he walks away. And then the next day, day 39, I talk to Billy, and Billy's like, hey, I think we got an accord. It's going to be a live exchange. Sit tight, right? Can you tell me about that? Or do you remember anything about that kind of moment when they blink, so to speak? Or at least it seems like that on my side.
Yeah, I remember it vividly, which I just pulled up my notes from this window. And something else that was really important, that was a variable here, is we came to the conclusion that not only did you have a hands-off director, the general was read in and he'd given directions, but absolutely believed that there was theft within the ranks. And so payments that may or may not have been made, different messaging and whatever was being passed on to the general. And so you have distrust within their own ranks, because we knew what was getting paid for other people. We had tracked who their communication handlers, couriers were, all of that. And obviously things were intensifying leading up to that with some of the treatment of people. You guys inside, that was a really difficult variable to navigate, where oftentimes we were trying to penetrate through the lead negotiator to get to the general, which we also had other ways of getting to him because of our relationships in history and country. And so we were actually back channeling messages directly to them, because we also, we wanted them to know, you have low-level guys who are stealing from you, which is a pretty interesting thing to be doing. So I guess no honor amongst thieves, but that one added a lot of complexity to it. When we were obviously excited on the agreement on a live exchange, and that would get agreed to, and then they would renege. They would get agreed to, and then that happened for several days leading up to the actual exchange, where they would say, no, you're going to come to us, and then they would try to renege, thinking that we would come in there, and we're going, heck no, there's zero chance we're coming into the house or up to that location where you were putting more risk. And that was something Mary was firm on. We would get hopeful, and then they would try to change it last minute, and we'd walk. And so we were really adamant about a live exchange. We're really adamant about no, the amount is the amount. We're not moving forward past it. And so they tried to do the bait and switch several times, which is what caused that to end up being a week when it could have been, that first day around day 38, 39. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about day 43, right? You finally get an accord. how did you make that final accord that ended up working?
We said the same thing that we'd said for 7 days, and they finally did it. It was that simple. We're going to do exactly what we said we're going to do. That until you guys are going to hold up your end, we're not going to change it or adjust it. We've made an agreement. They would go, no, we're going to change. We said, no, we made an agreement. If you're not going to do the agreement, then call us tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that just kept happening, right? And so on day 43, they finally had the motivation to just, do what you say you're going to do. It's not that complicated, but like, you've said many times, boys and their animals and they're just freaking terrible, people, and they're coming back. You never know I wish I knew the toxicity level of a guy when we were negotiating with him at a given point, right? How late was he up the night before? What's he still on? Yep. Who's he raped in the meantime? That kind of stuff. And they finally have the motivation, which is probably driven by, either their boss or some element of fear, but something causes them to actually do what they said they're going to do. And so when it did, said, okay, here's the next step. And they walked it out. Of course, when that happens, right? You're just on live communication cycles every 5 minutes, right? And there's so many potential points of failure and so many tools for, we're leveraging everything we can on validation, right? Because it's not just only people in the field aren't that person, right? There's other assets that we have who we're bouncing stuff off of or getting, visuals on and pressure checking everything with. Anyway, it's just a communication madhouse. But yeah, the team on the ground just absolutely crushed it in terms of doing an exchange that was secure, with protections around it, for you and for everyone else. And of course, we get a curveball because the courier decides he's gonna steal a couple $100. So all of us are about to lose our minds on that one. We're going, you got it.
I'll tell the audience a little bit about that. So some of you who've listened to the previous episodes may know that from my perspective, there was maybe $120 missing in Haitian good, and what got relayed to my team was there was $2,000 worth that was missing, right, give or take. And so what you learn from that is the courier was taking a piece of the action, right? And clearly that was already set up between Chef 2, Bad Cop, and the courier, right? So courier's getting paid, he's double dipping, right? Because he's getting paid by my team above the table, and then he figured out this ruse to get some more out of the deal, and clearly that worked.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, that was
anybody ever call that guy and say, hey, what the heck? Like, we know you stole a bunch of money from us.
So, there's certain guys that don't get used again, and there are guys that do that stuff. But, there's,
we don't work scary moment. Yeah. So then we get that worked out. You send him back in with the extra cash. You remember what you heard after that?
We knew the time frame. We have checkpoints for him coming in, because we're communicating with him directly, but we're also, we're tracking him. And then we get the call exchange is live. You getting the call that you're in the car and, hearing your voice and getting a picture of you and pulling up to the Marriott. Like, that was a good moment for us. That was a sweet moment for us. At the same time, you're immediately transitioning to, hey, is everybody going to do what they said they're going to do here? I appreciate it so much. Like, you get there, but nightmare's not over, right? Yeah. And the temptation is to, you think it's over, but there's the illusion always of a finish line with this stuff. You get home, and we'd set up Mary and Aaron, really talked to Aaron a lot about this during everything, and Mary, where, man, just like the re-engagement, it's like, it's like after a deployment or something where it's a tough deal, and you're not going to talk to anybody that can identify with it. And at the same time, you're jumping back in. But I remember thinking of you at the hotel going, man, he's not going to trust anybody. And I wouldn't if I were him, right? We hated some of the logistics around that. And so we were just really adamant about who was there and who was going to be present for you and who was responsible. And then, of course, we just don't trust anything. So we're just comms checking everything the whole time.
I remember checking everyone's ID. Anyone who knew what room I was going to be, I wanted to see their ID. Anybody who was walking behind me, I wanted to see their ID, right? If it wasn't FBI, then I wanted them somewhere else, right? Or somebody that I knew, that Dave guy, I don't even know if that's his real name. I was okay with him being around because he got me out, right? And then I remember having this feeling like I just wanted to fight everyone, right? Like it wasn't that I wanted to, it was just that my body was ready to, right? So like, let's see that ID. And if this doesn't go well, we are in trouble, which is of course an irrational reaction. Anyway, yeah.
I think it's perfectly rational. I mean, you've been, you're actually demonstrating and you're having to maintain a position of and posture of restraint, your entire captivity.
Yeah.
You're a big dude. I know you lost some pounds in there, but
fast.
there's not a one-on-one. I'm betting on you 100 out of 100 times in that environment. Particularly in this situation.
Never that.
But it's just, man, I can only imagine the frustration and that's pent up in that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're super concerned about that for you and trying to maintain like, hey, this isn't the finish line. We gotta support you through it and make sure you're on an airplane and back to the States. In that, I've got two things that are kind of burned into my mind. The picture you like in the back of the kind of ambulance there and checking on you, and the one of you and Mary in the car outside of Miami Airport. That was a big one. But, man.
Well, dude, Austin, yet again, thank you for everything. That'll never be enough, but I am certainly grateful that I've gotten a great friend and colleague out of it, because it's been a joy to collaborate with you and trying to help out in Haiti ever since, and I see that being a lifelong partnership. So I'm grateful for that, and of course, you hear me now?
I got you back. Man, honor to call you a friend. We were just a volunteer, right? So you got the free surgeon. We're just glad you're here. And it's an important story. I appreciate you having the courage to tell it. It's amazing how quick the criticism can come. I'm sure that you'll never talk about on here. That people are going to bring to you an accusation of motive or something else. And just as a character witness to you and Mary and the kind of people you are, the last thing you want is more unwelcomed, publicity. What you're trying to do is make sure that a story's told about a country that the world's forgotten about, and it, consistently overlooked, and it's a real problem. It's a real problem to be able to see it in the context of U.S. interest and national security. It's a massive problem to overlook the fact that you've got over 500,000 kids who haven't been to school in 5 years. Mm-hmm. You've got a generation that's being lost, and the number of murders, rape, and kidnappings are understated to a factor, probably 20 times is our guess. It's not okay, because you have a platform because you're an American citizen and capable and competent to deliver it. And these are going on daily with Haitians for what would seem like, very insignificant amounts to Americans here. And the fear and oppression that people lived in that country, it's not a new thing. This is a 6-year failed state thing. It's not okay. We're heartbroken. We sit here and do this today. Last night, 3 Americans were murdered, by gangs, right in Port-au-Prince.
Yeah, just a few miles from the airport.
Man, we're just, we're praying, man, what's it going to take for for people of integrity and character to care, to apply pressure to their representative, Haitians as well as Americans. We all have officials who are accountable and work for the people, and for the U.S. government to support the security objectives of that country to put an end to this. It's got to happen. And so thanks for raising your voice on it, man. It means a ton. And anything that we can do to help support Haiti and bring some peace, we want to see it. So appreciate your courage.
No, thanks, Austin. I appreciate that. I'm excited to get to the next phase of this podcast where we really start digging deep and educating the audience, the viewers, on what it's going to take to move things forward in Haiti. And hopefully you'll come back and be part of that as we try to get a massive amount of Americans, and I should say the international community, educated on what's next for Haiti and what needs to be next.
I love it. Don't stop. And anytime, that. Always behind you, Jeff.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you taking the time. You're the man. Say hi to the family for me, and thank them for allowing you to take time away yet again for Jeff.
You do the same to yours, brother. I'll see you,
All right,
Jeff.
dude. You're the man. Love you, brother. We'll see you.
Love you too. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the StimPack podcast and will subscribe, rate, review, and share it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you for listening. This podcast has been brought to you by StimPack Inc., copyright 2024. All rights reserved.